Jason, for those who only focus on dividend stocks, is there a risk that they might not be as diversified as they should be?
For sure. I think that's a big challenge, particularly in the Canadian market. The biggest dividend paying stocks are in the banking, utility, and telecom sectors. And if you were to look at a more diversified stock market like the S&P 500, for example, those three sectors are less than one quarter of the S&P 500. So investors could be significantly overweighting certain sectors, ignoring, technology and healthcare and consumer stocks and things like that that could create a more diversified portfolio. And look, there's worse sectors or stocks that you could overweight than Canadian banks, of course. But for perspective, over the last 5 years, the biggest Canadian bank, Royal Bank, has returned about 7.5% per year, sort of in line with the Toronto Stock Exchange. But the S&P 500 has done about 11% over the last 5 years, all in with dividends. Again, after a brutal year in 2022 as well.
Okay, let's talk about the next myth. Stocks are risky. Now, I
Yeah.
hear this one a lot because I run an online financial program. This is probably the one of the biggest concerns that women talk to me about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think stocks are risky depending on the time horizon you're looking at. And they can be more or less risky. And just on like a 1 year period, as an example, over the last 100 years, the S&P 500 has lost money about 25% of the time. If you look at day to day, the S&P 500 goes down about 44% of the time, or has gone down 44% of the time over the last 100 years. So day to day, stocks can be very risky, but over a 5 year period, the S&P 500 has gone up about 88% of the time.
Yeah.
And especially if you have a more diversified portfolio that includes Canadian stocks, international stocks, bonds, the likelihood of losing money over a medium term time horizon is very low.
Yeah, and let's not forget, you have a lot of variety of stocks. You could have, the small cap,
Hmm.
growth stocks, and then you have ones that are established. So risk varies.
That's just it. I mean, if you put everything into a junior mining stock, that's a risky portfolio. If you have exposure to an international exchange traded fund that owns 10,000 different stocks, you reduce your risk significantly. So, risk, I find, is all relative. And I think it's also very important to recognize the risk of your investments not growing enough to fund your retirement, or not generating enough
Yeah.
of a return to keep
Yeah.
up with inflation once you are retired.
Yeah, I always say it's hard to actually lose money if you follow simple rules, and that is take a longer term approach,
Hmm.
diversify your portfolio, and the fact that you just made Jason not investing is risky, especially because there's this depletion of purchasing power.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, y- the other point I want to make too, and get your thoughts on this, is that there's a lot of focus on investing when it comes to this fear around losing money. My experience, and I don't know if this is your experience, is that people will lose more money by not being protected from life events.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Well, I would agree. It's interesting. I wrote an article a couple years ago about uh, regret in retirement. And it was based on a study that was done where they had asked a whole bunch of retirees what were the things they regretted when they look back over their financial life. And interestingly, it wasn't saving enough. It wasn't, that they didn't invest aggressively enough, although those are important things. But the main regrets people had related to life events that came up, death, not having proper life insurance in place for a breadwinner, disability, or a health issue that impeded
Yeah.
their ability to work and earn an income. Death, disability, and divorce, I mean, are sort of the three D's that can derail, if you will, a financial plan. So even though some of these other ancillary things like investing and diversification and tax reduction are important, there are other risks that are important to mitigate. And you can do it with insurance to a certain extent. Divorce, I mean, that's a whole other thing. There's no
Yeah.
divorce insurance, but death and disability for sure.